Hello and welcome to our webinar, Maximize Your MFPs with Cloud Fax. Is your business ready? This is part two, second part of a two-part series. If you joined us before, thank you for joining again. And for those attendees who were not able to attend part one, as mentioned on the registration page, you should have seen a link to watch part one of our two-part series on demand. So please enjoy that if you didn't get a chance to see it. I am Michael Flavin, Senior Manager with eFax Corporate, part of J2 Global. And a little note here, Brad Spounbauer was on the docket to join us today. He's our Director of Product Marketing, but he has been taken up by other events, so he won't be with us. However, we're very privileged and happy to be joined today by Peter Ely. He's our leader, Channels, Enterprise Marketing from our eFax Corporate team, also part of J2 Global. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Really glad to have you here. So let's kick off here with our agenda. So for our agenda today, we're going to drill down a little bit from our first session on the MFP Fax Direct feature. A lot of the feedback we got from the first webinar was the how, the questions on how do we integrate, what's the integration look like, how do we make this work? And that was from existing customers or folks who had joined for the first time and learned that this feature, this great feature was out there. So we're going to drill down a little bit for you and try and give you some use cases and a little more guidance on how you can get it. So that's our agenda today. We're going to discuss eFax Corporate MFP Fax Direct feature. So how do you get it? And another note, so previously you may have seen the MFD connector on our website or in material out there on the internet or the blogosphere, or MFD integrate, but we've renamed this great feature to the MFP Fax Direct feature, and it's renamed simply to reflect exactly what it's accomplishing. It lets users fax directly from the glass of an MFP with a touch of a button. So we'll get into the details of that. And then next we'll discuss what the Fax Direct feature can do for your organization. It helps you to create an integrated system for all of your document transmissions. We'll also discuss how integration of your MFPs with eFax Corporate can really streamline your workflows and make things more efficient for your organization. And holistically can really help you eliminate unnecessary fax infrastructure and some dated technology and footprint that the ID or business owners typically find it, frankly, as a bit of a headache. Then we'll get into some use cases. We're going to have Peter walk us through some business verticals that rely heavily on faxes as part of their business, such as legal or insurance, and the how of automating that process with MFP Fax Direct. And we'll then discuss how integrating your fax process with eFax Corporate can enhance compliance, which is really important for folks these days, and security vis-a-vis all of the cyber hacking and all the news about things like Frank Dodd and other legal compliance issues coming down from the federal government, such as HIPAA. And then finally, we'll review why eFax Corporate is a solid candidate for outsourcing your fax infrastructure and processes to a cloud fax model. And then we'll conclude with a Q&A. And a little housekeeping note, typically we try and address all the questions that we get. MFP is one of those areas where we get a lot of questions. We will do our best to answer all of those, but if we don't, we'll have someone from eFax Corporate reach out to you to answer those or help you get started, whatever your needs are. And that's our agenda today. Okay, so let's dive in. Multifunction printers, MFPs, are a great way and an easy way to simplify your workflow. So as we discussed in part one of our webinar series, multifunction printers integrated with the MFP Fax Direct feature is a great way to increase productivity and improve workflows from existing assets that businesses have invested in. And as we'll see, millions of these devices in 2014 shipped last year. So businesses would be well advised to understand that there's other benefits that they can get out of these. Most organizations what we're finding in conversations aren't really fully maximizing their MFPs, and we see these as the low-hanging fruit, if you will, for IT management and businesses, because these features, one, can be deployed pretty quickly and very cost effectively without adding additional hardware, software, or having a big transition period. But why fax? I mean, some of you in the audience may be saying, why am I going to invest either the time or thought or due diligence in looking at this? Well, as we discussed in part one, there's many reasons that fax is still necessary for business and technology thought leadership, and it's going to be for years to come. I wanted to give a quick 1-minute review of those reasons. There's a lot of misconceptions about fax and faxing out there, but briefly, here's why businesses still need fax capabilities and should look for ways to improve those. So first of all, if you're one of those businesses that's in highly regulated environments such as legal, healthcare, financial, for example, what if your business requires a confirmation receipt for audit purposes? You want to know, say, that loan application or that request for a surgery approval went through so that there's no delay in a process. That's something that fax meets a need for. On the compliance and regulatory front, what if the communication modes that a business is using is not in the best alignment with federal regulations or privacy regulations such as HIPAA or GLBA, or SOX for that matter? And then also the need for document trackability. I mean, what if your business needs a clear and complete audit trail of every transmission for audit and billing purposes, or to go back and confirm that a fax was indeed sent and received by a customer so that they can look that up. And then lastly, market demands. What if a customer wants to send your business a wedding signature on a fax, or they need to send something at the last minute to your organization? Do you have an efficient way to receive that and get it to the end user who needs to look at that information and make a business action based on that? And then finally, security requirements. What if your documents contain sensitive data? I alluded to HIPAA. There's been a lot of news this year with breaches. So the security of documents is tantamount to the reputation and business viability in many cases to these organizations that get hit with large fees. So what if the communications means that a business is using is not in best alignment with that? Security is very important to business. So last, before I mentioned that, interestingly enough, 17 million also is the number that of MFPs that were sold in 2014, last year, according to research firm IDC. And by the way, the manufacturers listed here are the top 5 that were listed according to this research report. So these devices are out there in enterprise and small business environments. And let's talk a little bit more now about ways you can make them more efficient with eFax Corporate. Okay, so let's get into the specifics of how eFax Corporate, the Fax Direct, MFP Fax Direct feature can help your organization in improving employee workflows, boosting productivity, and perhaps just as important, relieve you, whether you're a business owner or a CIO, your IT staff, of some of the IT headaches associated with dated fax infrastructure in your current faxing process. So we'll get into the specifics now, like I said, of eFax Corporate MFP Fax Direct, how it can help your organization optimize the workflows and increase the return on investment on your existing MFPs. For now, just a quick overview of a common question that we get. What is the MFP Fax Direct feature? How do we get it? So as I said before, we had renamed this, and the MFP Fax Direct feature essentially lets your staff fax right from the glass of your existing MFPs. But with an eFax Corporate account, you can get so much more from that. We'll get into that in a minute. But this is an important use case because in our conversations with a lot of organizations, we find that their employees will not follow the most efficient workflows. For example, in the insurance industry, the person who has to process insurance claims, they send a lot of faxes, say, to healthcare organizations or to legal entities for specific issues. Well, they may scan these documents in and return to their desk and then open the PDF and then email them. You get the idea. Not the most efficient and maybe not necessarily the most secure, especially with everything we've seen that everyone's seen this year as far as cyber hacking and sending things over the wire and email on the public domain. So with the MFP Fax Direct feature, it's real simple. You place your fax, say a 20-page authorization. It could be litigation going to a court. You pop it onto the printer, the ADF, automatic document feeder, and then you can scan that in, and then eFax Corporate is going to convert that fax into an electronic file, a PDF or a TIFF, and then it sends it to your recipient's fax number where it'll be appears as a standard fax. And what's neat about this, given the industry that you're in, this could include custom cover pages, so it also saves employees time and is a great benefit in that for the repeated work that they do, they can just basically search for that fax number. It can be automated as a process. It can be programmed in as a hotkey or a memorized fax number with those annotations, what we call SMTP configurations with specific codes that will basically configure all of that so that the employee doesn't have to pull up a custom cover page, add it in, save the document. They can do it right from the glass. Much more efficient. And then we'll talk about security later, which can also enhance that process. And then lastly, eFax Corporate is going to log all of the relevant metadata and those faxes, depending on how you want to configure things and depending on your security requirements. And that's all accessible through the admin portal or the user's account for future retrieval. And that could be for audit or compliant purposes or just pulling up something and maybe resending it to a customer. So many of you are wondering, in fact, on this webinar, and in fact, many of our clients and IT staff ask the question, well, fax is dealing with dated fax technology is not necessarily top of mind, so, why should we be doing this due diligence or put thought into this? What's the integration work look like? Well, before we answer that question, and I think you'll be pretty pleased with the answer as far as the integration or the migration to a cloud fax model, just let me pose this question to you as a business owner or CIO or IT manager or that person who's hands-on with the fax technology. Just imagine that this is what your network looks like today. Many enterprises we encounter or mid-sized businesses have many fax machines, some of them many locations, and then they have fax servers depending on the volume that they do, and of course the MFPs on the right. There's millions of those that have shipped and companies have invested in. That's a pretty heavy lift when it comes to IT maintenance, and that could be in terms of licensing, patches and updates, replacing cards, the telco lines, maintenance, and those things. It's a bit of an IT headache. Frankly, the IT folks I talk to would rather be talking about VMware and virtual SAN, storage area networks, and the cool new stuff. So here's a way that you can go from this heavy footprint IT architecture to an architecture that looks like this with eFax Corporate. It's easy to integrate your MFPs into a single integrated system for all of your fax and document transmissions. So notice how these fax servers and the fax machines, and the thing we really don't depict here is all the work and maybe the headaches of getting complaints about, hey, we didn't get that fax about the approval, the client didn't receive something. Oh, our license is up, we need to rebuild the server, those type of things, that work that your organization is doing the heavy lifting on. And now with eFax Corporate, you've eliminated that whole left side, and now it's a cloud fax model with the added benefit of, by the way, your employees, if they need to send that paper fax, it can be automated. If you have remote employees or outside sales reps or folks that are on the go, they can fax from any endpoint, as it's commonly known in the IT world, and that could be a tablet, a Droid, an iPad, for example, or from their PC or Mac. So it adds a lot of mobility and can add security depending on what your requirements are. So a really clean network. So the other question is, now that we've answered, what is the lift? Well, you can migrate, like I said, it's a real simple migration. You can do a migration with no downtime. If you have existing fax numbers, if that's a concern, we can port those over for you. So literally, you can flip the switch and be up and running with eFax Corporate based on the configuration, security, and other issues that your organization requires. And we have a great support organization who can help you get up and running with that. But what does it take to get going? Well, step one is to get an eFax Corporate account, and I'm sure that we have plenty of folks in the organization that would be glad to help you with that. Whether you're an existing customer or someone who's joined us today and you haven't joined us before and you weren't aware of this, all you need is to set up that account. And then step two is to make sure that those MFPs are network ready or internet connected. Most of them today are Ethernet. They're just like an endpoint. They're ready to go. Some of them are Wi-Fi, whatever that is, as long as they can connect to the internet. And thirdly, make sure that the MFP can send and receive emails. So that may be that they have in the case of a smaller business, we'll get into those details with Peter, but it could be that, say it's a Canon or a Konica Minolta. Those integrations with a small office, the MFP may have its own email address that came with it. In an enterprise setting, the sysadmin or the network engineer may say, okay, I'm going to assign this as MFP 123 corner office. And you can do that as well, as long as it can send and receive, and that's it. You are good to go, and then your staff can start sending faxes directly from the glass to recipients with eFax Corporate. Okay, so we talked a little bit about our conversations with existing clients and other IT thought leadership and business owners, and the fact that the aha moment for them was that by moving to a cloud fax model, in addition to reducing that dated fax technology footprint, which was delightful for them, they love the fact that now their employees could fax on the go. They could fax directly from MFPs, and basically it saves them money, and there's a big benefit there. And we also talked about, and we'll get into more detail of the fact that this process, that is faxing with paper documents, if you need to do that, can be automated as well. So businesses love that. So let's transition to some of the integration models now that we've covered. What does it look like? What is the lift to integrate to this, which we hope you find is pretty straightforward. We can port your numbers over, and you're eliminating costly fax infrastructure and IT headaches. But what about the how of integration? How can we integrate into our environment? Are you flexible? Which could be a whole webinar in and of itself. But we're going to walk through a couple basic models, and then we'll transition over to Peter, who's going to give you the how of automating the MFP processes and some really cool use cases that some of our clients are utilizing today in their environment to do what we just described, and that's automate processes of faxing documents. So for our first scenario, this is a setup of a typical SOHO or small office, say a legal practice. It could be a real estate office. It could be a dental practice. It's a small office, home office, with a couple multifunction printers in their environment. In many cases, these are shared devices that multiple people can print to. As I mentioned before, the MFP will have commonly an email address that is assigned by the OEM, and that's routed through the cloud, hosted by that vendor's email service, and then sent to the email. Sent to the MFP's email address will be the messages. They can be printed automatically, so the delivery confirmation can be printed automatically, and it's as simple as that. So you just need that eFax account, a networked printer, what that email is, and then Peter will get into the details of that configuration. So to set up this integration, you're just adding the MFP emails addressed as both the send and receive on one of the Office eFax user accounts, and once that is added to an account, fax is sent to the user's fax number will be emailed to the printer, as I mentioned, and they'll print automatically. And then when sending, the users can use the scan to email function, and that will generate an email message and then address the outgoing email as normal when using fax number at efaxsend.com. So it's a pretty easy setup, easy to use as far as IT lift and configuration, almost no administrative overhead to set up a bunch of users. You're just using an existing account. And because it's all tied to one account, though, the downside of this model for a small business may not be a big issue, is that a lot of the granular reporting that comes with it, with fax usage, is limited. So you're using the email of the vendor that you're working with. You may have other limitations like security, for example. TLS encryption may not be supported. So there are some limitations, but it's pretty easy for a small business to get up and running, which most small businesses love. In our second scenario, a basic enterprise MFP integration, this involves the use of a larger MFD. You see many of these located within larger offices across an enterprise. These devices are often integrated tightly into the organization's network, and that can vary depending on security requirements and what business, this business vertical that is being served. In most cases, the MFPs will have an email address assigned by the network admin, and they leverage the organization's email infrastructure, so an Exchange server, for example. And this device may only have access to network shares or storing files, for example. So messages sent to the MFP's email address can be printed out automatically, or they could be written to a storage directory or shared folder for storage or compliance purposes, etc. And the MFP is not configured to require individual user authentication in this case. So what that means is anyone could walk up to the MFP and send a fax directly. They can copy, scan, and print as well. So to set up this integration, you would need to create the eFax user account for the device using its email address for sending and receiving, and any faxes sent to the MFP's fax number will be emailed to the printer for automatic printing or storage, or it could be sent to a storage area network, for example. And when sending the scan to email function on the MFD, the address of the outgoing email, you just address it as normal when using eFax, fax number at efaxsend.com. This configuration is really easy to set up and maintain and allows employees in the office to send a fax without having an eFax account themselves personally. You can assign custom cover pages to each printer account, and by using your email server, you could implement tighter security protocols, for example, like TLS encryption, which is a step up from SSL. However, like the small office, home office, or desktop solution, this configuration doesn't provide delivery confirmation receipts to individual senders. You get them, but it doesn't route to them for this reason, and it doesn't necessarily offer the granular reporting or usage tracking that can be enabled with our next scenario. So in this scenario, this is an enterprise MFP integration with Active Directory. Some organizations use LDAP. And this is an even tighter integration scenario for those organizations who require it. And this could be a government organization or healthcare organization that requires that forced login to any endpoint, whether that be a PC or an MFP. So we have that capability if it is needed. And it requires a little more administrative lift up front, and we'll get into the details of that in a second. So in addition to an email address on the organization's email server, the MFP will also be tied to Active Directory or LDAP for user authentication, as I mentioned. Then the MFP is configured to require individual user authentication. So users in the office have to log in to the device, as I said, before they can scan, copy, and print, as opposed to the previous two scenarios whereby anybody can walk up and just do what they need to do. To set up this integration, again, create an eFax user account, in this case for every person in the office who will be using fax services. Faxes sent to the users' fax numbers will be emailed to each user for viewing, and then when sending, the user logs into the MFP and can use the scan to email function of the MFD, which Peter will cover in detail on how to configure that, and then address the outgoing email as normal when using eFax, which is fax number at efaxsend.com. But unlike the previous scenario, the email appears to come from that user themselves, not from the printer, and thus are tied to each individual's eFax user account. And since the individual users are identified, this scenario allows for the greatest degree of reporting and tracking accuracy, and it provides a very clear audit trail, and also it gives each user the added benefit of the delivery confirmation. So they will get that receipt directly as opposed to having it sent to a shared folder. Now, a system administrator could make could configure it probably to do distribution lists and those type of things, but this is just the basic enterprise MFP integration. So the one important note here, again, is that the gains in reporting and the granular information that you can get of the faxing activity of each user and confirmation receipts and the convenience of that comes with a little bit of administrative overhead. As we mentioned, every user in the organization really needs to have their own properly configured eFax corporate account for this to happen. And so final scenario, this is the enterprise MFP integration with the MFP connector. And that's a typo there. I apologize. It's MFD, MFP. Multifunction printers is the most commonly used language. And our final scenario leverages our new feature, the MFP Fax Direct feature. This solution is designed for organizations that want to allow any user to walk up and send a fax, but also get the detailed tracking and delivery confirmations, but without the administrative work up front that we described in the previous scenarios, for example, using Active Directory and then setting up each individual user. And a lot of our IT folks gave us rave reviews on this feature because it solves a problem for them and makes things a lot easier. So to set that up, you create the eFax account for each MFP in the organization. As we mentioned before, it can be what's assigned, or it can be an external user, but it's got to be associated with that unique MFP. And to send a fax, the user will use the scan to email function, but instead of the standard email address that we've alluded to, fax number at efaxsend.com, your users will include some additional parameters in the recipient address. The details, as I mentioned, Peter will cover shortly. But these parameters allow users to specify their own email address for the delivery confirmation. So it's kind of a self-serve model, and they can enter their own email address so that they get that get that confirmation receipt, and they can also select a custom cover page or say supply a client matter or department billing code on that cover page, which is handy when they do a lot of that type of faxing. It can be automated completely, which is a great streamlining of workflows. So this is, again, a great use case, as I mentioned, for employees who do a lot of faxing. Many MFPs have a user interface for configurable hotkeys or memorized numbers that can be added in through SMTP for sending faxes, the scan to email to fax function and then set into memory. So this user doesn't have to do this every time they walk up to the fax. This could simply be stored in memory or configured by, say, an IT manager or a sysadmin, and then they're off and running. So after faxing, the delivery confirmation in this use case is emailed directly to the sender, while the email address and the billing codes are stored in the usage logs, and this allows the granular reporting that businesses like and the usage tracking and the enhanced audit trail. So you can see to and from and did this, when did the fax get through, and all that important metadata associated with faxes. So with the MFP Fax Direct feature, we've reduced the administrative overhead with the previous integration model, but you're giving every user in your organization a customizable outbound fax solution. So very flexible models. We can integrate with whichever way your organization would like to integrate. We have flexible options there. And now let's transition to Peter for some of the details on how to configure the MFPs for use with the eFax MFP Fax Direct feature. So let's turn it over to Peter. Peter, can you walk us through some of the great detail on how to do this and some use cases of customers that are using eFax Corporate today?
Thank you, Michael, for the great introduction as to how this all works in the background. Now what we're going to do is take you through some actual use cases so you can see how it actually is done in the real world and show you some specific examples. First, we're going to delve a bit more deeply into the actual how of configuring an MFP to integrate with the MFP Fax Direct feature. We will use the enterprise example Michael mentioned earlier, giving you an overview of how to configure your MFP so that your users can fax directly from the MFP glass and can also take advantage of some customizing options that Michael mentioned. Things like custom cover pages, return receipts, client matter or billing codes, amongst others. After we do that, we'll take you through two specific examples from our customer base, how businesses in the legal and insurance industries have used this feature to solve some of the business workflow inefficiencies associated with fax. As mentioned, integrating your fax processes with cloud faxing through eFax Corporate is a great way to simplify your business workflow, creating a one-step process by faxing directly from the MFP glass. For example, in a healthcare example, the need to send EPHI to pharmacies or insurance companies for further action. This must include an EPHI disclosure page, a cover sheet. This is required by law. The MFP configuration can be set up so that this is done with a single push of a button, a process set up by the sysadmin. It includes a custom cover page, confirmation receipt automatically, and this is a step that is critical for HIPAA compliance, and it's also great for audit trails and better patient care. So let's walk through a sample configuration based on Michael's earlier example. As discussed earlier, you'll first need to set up an eFax account. That's a one-time thing. We, of course, can help you with that. You need to have an MFP that's network ready and can use the existing email of the device, or you can assign an email to it. With eFax Corporate account from the administration portal, simply set up this printer as a user. If needed, our support staff can help you with a setup for all of your organization's devices. It is in this step where you can also upload custom cover pages for use from the MFPs with the one-time help of the administrator. In the enterprise integration scenario, using the enterprise integration with MFP Fax Direct feature, anyone can walk up and send a fax. It just depends on what's best for your organization as to which method you use. On the other hand, for numbers that will be sent to frequently, you'll want to enter this info into the MFP's user interface. Above, this is an example screen. Other MFPs may have different UI or flows, but your IT support or administrators can add this for you in your organization. In this case, you're leveraging the MFP's fax to email functionality. Once the fax number is added to the MFP's address book and shown on the printer control panel, any user can walk up and send a fax directly from the glass with this feature. As shown in the entry in green, this address entry can include the triggers for including a custom cover page and return receipt address. So it only has to be entered once as you initially configure the MFP. In this scenario, the administrator programmed into the fax number at efaxstand.com. He also added a custom cover page called, simply in our example, WGCP1, which in our example stands for Workgroup Copier 1. Doesn't mean anything specific. And the return address, michael@efaxsend.com. So this user is set up to send this from the address book of the MFP, faxing directly to the cloud with a touch of a button. Now we'll take you through some specific case examples from our customer base. Let's do one in legal first. Let's consider how this typical organization is using the MFP Fax Direct feature. By example, we work with over half of the law firms in the American Lawyers Top 100, and they of course rely heavily on our portfolio to send faxes worldwide. This particular customer uses eFax Corporate with the optional TLS encryption enabled to send documents on behalf of their customers, their clients, to the courts. So let's drill down a little bit further. This top 100 firm has 19 locations and wanted to solve for automation of the process so that the administrative assistants or paralegals could send documents to the same court with a touch of a button, accompanied automatically by a custom cover page, a confirmation receipt to ensure timely filings of appeals, and done so in a highly secure manner to protect client confidentiality. In this case, as you can see at the bottom of the screen in green, the firm programmed in what you see. CN equals the cover page name, in this case, Direct Court Number 9 Appeals, which toggles on the cover page, CP, automatically. And second, RA to John. The admin set this up to trigger the return address confirmation receipt to johndoe@efaxsend.com. With this, once the firm has scanned in and sent the fax document using the MFP Fax Direct feature, the audit trail will be easily traceable along with the confirmation receipt, a critical piece to law practice operations. Administrators have the option to copy the return receipt to a shared folder or store Jerry Network for future retrieval as well. Let's try a second customer, the insurance industry. In the insurance industry, many of our clients rely heavily on faxing for authorizations, medical claims, or transmission of other protected health information. This involves the critical elements of security, compliance, and confirmation and audit trails. In this example, we're looking at one of our insurance clients that uses faxes to send these authorizations to their associated providers for surgeries. This particular insurance firm sends ePHI, known as Electronic Protected Health Information and protected under HIPAA, to a given surgery center multiple times each day. Their goal was to automate this process and enhance security, as their original mode of communications may not have been aligned with HIPAA. Typical examples they may have suffered of misalignments are, not for this client in particular, but in general, are faxes without specific PHI disclosures on the cover page, or faxes lying in the open exposed to PHI breach at the recipient's end. Both of these may trigger reportable events under HIPAA. Their goal was to automate the process of sending assigned hard copy authorizations to the surgery center each day, ideally with a single touch of the button. The requirements: each fax will contain patient PHI, each fax will contain the ePHI disclosure. This is again in green at the bottom of the slide. Using eFax Corporate and with the optional TLS configured, the insurance administrator is able to send many fax authorizations to the surgery center each day by simply dropping them onto the MFP, scanning them, and then utilizing the memorized MFP fax address configured to do this. This is a great time saver, which also helps enhance compliance. Here in this example, a custom cover page was generated disclosing that ePHI is being transmitted to the receiver. A confirmation was set to be sent to the sender, and a copy of that receipt is also sent to the secure folder on their Exchange server managed by their systems administrator. In summary, businesses and enterprise can enjoy the benefit of a single integrated system for all fax documents, with the added perk of eliminated unneeded and dated fax infrastructure, commonly a pain point for IT staff and business owners. We've also discussed how new customers and existing clients are pleased to get more use out of their existing MFP investments while improving workflows and compliance, all simply by moving to a cloud fax solution with eFax Corporate. And with this, I'll hand it back over to Michael for a complete wrap-up.
So, Peter, thank you for those great use cases and walking us through some of those scenarios. Our customers are getting some huge benefits and eliminating a lot of pain points, as you alluded to, and hopefully that the specific configuration of memorized hotkeys or programmable single button faxing will help our audience understand that they can get more from the investment that they made in their MFPs, and so much more with an eFax corporate account. Just one other huge benefit I wanted to touch on just briefly along the lines of compliance. We touched on that before. eFax corporate has many solutions that can help your business depending on what industry they're in and what your requirements are, and that could be TLS encryption enabled and encrypted storage of data, your faxes on the cloud. So depending on your requirements, we have solutions that can help you. And another huge benefit that a lot of IT administrators and business owners get in working and migrating to a cloud fax model is the fact that they can lose those servers and those faxes that can have protected health information or PII, personally identifiable information, stored on them. Which is a security issue and a bit of a headache for them when audits come or they can run awry with compliance issues. So just wanted to mention that as another great benefit that businesses get. So why choose eFax Corporate as your partner if you want to move to a cloud fax solution? We talked about a little bit about the audit and compliance, but also the added benefit of not having to scale your own infrastructure if you're in the mortgage industry and you're doing a lot of end-of-month faxing. You don't have to plan for capacity now that that infrastructure is managed by eFax Corporate. And the redundancy part in disaster recovery, some folks forget often to factor in the fact that they have to have a DR site to keep faxing going, and that can double the cost of your IT footprint along the lines with volume requirements. That's something you can take completely off the table and transition really to a pay-as-you-go model. If your volume goes up or down, you have a model that you pay for your use, which is more efficient for many organizations as opposed to investing, say, $30,000 in a rack server, the fax software. You get the idea. And then the security protocols. Security is our business. We support, as Peter said, well over half of the top 100 ALM law firms, healthcare providers, whether that be with eFax Corporate or the developer API, which we'll talk about in another webinar. Chances are we have a solution that will be right for your organization and can actually help you enhance your compliance with respect to faxing. And then last thing we wanted to touch on when we talked about the infrastructure and the scalability, this is a high-level, 60,000-foot level network architecture diagram. This is a big differentiator about eFax Corporate. I mean, faxing is our core business. This is what we do. We've got worldwide locations, so for those organizations who fax throughout the world, we have a footprint there, chances are, and eFax Corporate, it's important to note, has a geographically dispersed global network with Tier 3 and Tier 4 co-locations providing high uptimes, 99.5% or better uptimes, rapid delivery times for faxes, and unparalleled transmission security. These are very heavy-duty, secure centers, so all of your data will be encrypted and secure, and you will have business continuity and disaster recovery built into this communication medium when you partner with eFax Corporate.
Michael, thank you very, very much, both for giving me a break on speaking and for some great information. People, as you can see on the slide, we're going to go into Q&A next. Just for your reference, there's some places to get more information. Enterprise.efax.com, we've got a variety of videos and things like that to show you how this all works. Of course, you can call our various salespeople to back you up. Some of you have had some fairly complex questions. You might find talking to one of our SEs informational. But as we see in the Q&A session, there's a lot of really good questions, and I'm going to hand that over to Michael to go through a few of them.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for that, and everyone for attending today. We hope that it was helpful. We'll jump in. We're running a little long, but we're getting really some really good questions here. So let's dive right in to our questions. So first of all, first question comes from Jesse. Does this work, eFax Corporate, work if you don't have an email server in-house? Peter, what do you say?
It absolutely does. The only constraint is you need to be able to address the MFP with an email address. And so if you're using email within your organization with your own URL or your own domain, it's as simple as assigning the email address to the MFP the same way you would assign it to one of your colleagues. It does get a bit more complicated if you're using a large domain like @gmail.com or something like that without your own URL, but that's something worth talking to one of our SEs about. But if you've got your own dedicated email address, it's a piece of cake.
Great, great. The next question comes from Cheryl, and she wants to know, let's see, so this solution will not work for personally identifiable information. It appears this information travels via email and not fax. Great question, Cheryl. So actually, as part of one of the many solutions that we have, I assume you may be in an industry that has a financial data that needs to get transferred. We can enable TLS encryption, TLS 1.2, the strongest level of encryption, to protect that information. So end-to-end, it's going to be protected as part of your implementation. So absolutely, that can be done.
And just to add to Michael's comment, healthcare is one of our largest industries, and you know how HIPAA and those protocols require that personal information be kept personal and secure. eFax serves that industry very, very well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and that includes encryption in transit and in rest. So we have those type of solutions, and we should be able to help you out. Great question. Next question comes from Brian, and he is asking, can you eFax from a combination of desktops and or MFPs? Great question. Well, Brian, absolutely. So I don't know if you saw that in the presentation we had one slide that showed multiple endpoints, and that could be an iPad, a tablet, a PC, and of course we addressed the MFPs today. The beautiful thing about and a lot of the driver for customers moving to eFax Corporate is they get the enhanced capability of MFPs and the hot buttons we talked about, but so much more. I mean, your workforce is empowered to receive and send faxes from any of those endpoints, and it stops a lot of walking around and paper usage if that's something that's going to benefit your business. Would you add anything to that, Peter?
That sounds perfect to me.
Great. Right. Next question comes from Paul, and he's asking, we have over 300 MFPs and many of our shared machines, so there's a need to fax from several people. And the issue that they're solving for is also to receive fax, where faxes are going to their email is an issue, it looks like. So they need the MFP to receive the fax, which is why they're still using analog lines. Peter?
You can certainly use the MFP to receive the emails. Sometimes you want to consider whether that MFP is in an open area and leaving information on that open area that you may not want exposed. Other than that, it can offload the inbound emails. You could also use a group domain send so that a variety of different people could receive the emails together. This is one of the things that it would be best that we have you talk to an SE given the size of your network, but it certainly is possible to do what you're asking.
Yeah, and then as we covered, I would only add that the custom, along the custom cover sheet workflow and the confirmation, those can be set up to print automatically as well. We're running late on time, folks. We went over. We want to be respectful of your time. We're going to take one last question. This question comes from William, and he's asking, does the eFax Direct feature require a client or download or hardware? William, and absolutely not. This is a cloud-based service, so you're not going to need to do anything. That's the beauty of it. You're just moving to a cloud-based model. And however, for any of the existing fax numbers you have, you can keep those. We can help you port those numbers over and eliminate all those analog lines, which if you add them up and you have multiple lines and into the hundreds, as some of our audience has mentioned today, it could be a good cost saver for you. Peter, would you add anything to that as well?
I think you're golden.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, thank you for joining today. Very good audience questions and participation. We hope this has been informative for you. And if we didn't get to your question, I apologize. Again, we want to be respectful of your time. We will definitely have someone from eFax Corporate reach out to you. Thank you for joining today. It's been a pleasure. Peter, thanks so much for joining us as well.
Thank you. You're very welcome. It was fun.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great day.